Well, good morning. Good to see you here today. I'm Pastor Austin Almaguer. I want to welcome you to Vienna Baptist Church. Whether this is your first time or you've lost track of time, whether you're here in the room or you're worshiping with us online, no matter who you are and where you are, we are excited to worship with you. May you know that here at Vienna Baptist, as we worship, all our lives and our loves are welcomed here to find a place of belonging. As a community of faith, we are committed to growing as disciples of Jesus and joining in what God is doing in the world. And so there's lots of fun ways you can be a part of that this week. This afternoon is actually a great day. We've got our Trunk or Treat event happening here in the parking lot at 4:30 today. And so I hope that you will join us, whether you are planning to decorate your car or dress up in costume or help out here. This is a big event in the Almaguer household. I will tell you that. My 4-year-old has been talking about this all week and was very clear on the costumes that everyone in the household should wear. So we're on a superhero theme. You can come this afternoon and figure out what Zora has decided Daddy should dress up as. So the little preview there for you. If you're in the worship room here today and you're interested in helping out, just with a quick thing, right after church, we're going to take just 5 minutes to help rope off some areas in the parking lot. And so if you'd like to help, meet Pastor Jenny out in the foyer right after church, and we'll do that together. So a great way to get ready for this afternoon. And then I hope that you check out your bulletin or your online newsletter. There are a lot of great missions opportunities, ways in which we're partnering with our community to make a difference this month. One of our mission partners, Marshall Road Elementary School, we're working with for both a food drive this month to support families dealing with food insecurity, but also a winter clothing drive as that kind of cold weather begins to approach, making sure that kids can stay warm this winter. So some great drives there. Also kind of looking ahead, supporting our other mission projects. CHO is doing some Christmas gift drives as well. So a lot of ways that you can make a difference. And as always, if you don't feel up to going out, making purchases, or being able to go to the grocery store, you can always go online and make a gift to our missions team, and our missions leaders will take care of making all the purchases for you. So a great way that you can help us make a difference. Well, I won't run through all the opportunities in your bulletin, but be sure to check it out. These are just a few of the ways that we are seeking to learn, to serve, to give, and care this week at Vienna Baptist. But today, we've set aside time in our week to encounter God's transformative Spirit, to be inspired to grow into the people God has created us to be, and to be challenged to leave from here to go out and join in what God is doing in the world. So it's in that spirit of praise, of inspiration, and of challenge, I'll invite you, will you join with me as we go to God in prayer? God, we give thanks for today. We give thanks for this space that is created both in person and online, the ways in which, while we may be separated by physical distance, we are united in spirit. Today, as we reflect on your call to hospitality, may we sense the welcoming spirit of this place. May we know that you welcome us here, that we find a place to belong in your love, and that together we might go on a journey of mutual care and support, seeking to be your people of love on mission in the world. We give you this time. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.
from one country to another, showing them extra kindness. So they would farm, and they would harvest crops, so get food, and they would leave some crops behind. So that way, those who didn't have land or couldn't buy food could have food. But they knew that there was enough for all of God's children. That is a way of loving your neighbor as yourself. They knew that these people did not act like them or look like them or even believe the same as them, but they knew that God tells them to love their neighbor, even with all those differences. Love, show kindness. And that's what we're called to do. And like I said, God tells us that when we love our neighbor as ourselves, when we're kind to those who may be different from us, we are holy like God is holy. So whether you're looking at a Bible next time you see the word holy, H-O-L-Y, or you just think about loving your neighbor as yourself, I hope that you will practice that, and you will treat your neighbor kindly. Let's pray together. Dear God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ways that you love us, and you call us to love each other. Even those who might act or look or believe differently than us, may we still love. In your name we pray. All right, if you are going outside for children's worship, we're going to meet right outside there, and then we'll go outside.
Well, now is the time in our service we give thanks for the ways in which God has been good to us. We celebrate generosity so we can practice being a blessing to others. We give as a community of faith because we love God, because we believe that God has called us to this exciting mission, changing lives and transforming our community with the love of God. This week, I want to celebrate our Rekindle grant that our church applied for and won as we're thinking about, drawing from Pastor Jenny's children's message, this theme of loving our neighbors. The Columbia Theological Seminary down in Decatur, Georgia, was giving out $15,000 impact grants to invest in churches doing creative and innovative ministries. We were actually one of only 8 churches out of 62 applicants who applied to receive one of these grants. And the focus of our grant is to be able to think about, as we live in a rapidly changing county, and we'll talk more about this in the sermon, but as our community is changing, how do we change our missions and ministries, our opportunities, our relationships in the community in ways that are responsive to our communities, in the ways in which we can be a place of deep and real belonging, where we can be inclusive and multicultural and anti-racist and bold and compelling in ways that our community longs for. And so I'm really excited about this journey. I and some other leaders will be going through the orientation conference this week via Zoom, and then we'll be talking more and more about different programs and opportunities and ways in which we'll be thinking and praying and reflecting on this. So it'll be a really exciting winter for us on into the spring. Excited for the leaders who really crafted this grant proposal, who supported it in prayers and discernment, and those who kind of lead this charge ahead. So lots of exciting things happening for us, and we're really grateful for the ways in which we can use these resources as a way to be a blessing to our community. And so it's a reminder for all of us, the ways in which that we are invited to invest ourselves through the resources that God has given us, our prayers, our energy, and our money, to join God in building a better world of justice, love, and mercy for all. And practicing generosity, giving at VBC, is simple and easy. If you're here in the room, you can give in our donations box right outside the sanctuary doors. You can text to give. If you're worshiping with us online, you can go to viennabc.org/give. No matter how you choose to give, though, thank you for your prayers and support as we seek to follow the Spirit and making disciples of Jesus who join God in changing the world.
A reading from Leviticus. The Lord told Moses to say to the community of Israel, I am the Lord, your God. I am holy, and you must be holy too. When you harvest your grain, always leave some of it standing along the edges of your fields, and don't pick up what falls on the ground. Don't strip your grapevines clean, or gather the grapes that fall off the vines. Leave them for the poor and for those foreigners who live among you. I am the Lord your God. Do not steal or tell lies or cheat others. Do not misuse my name by making promises you don't intend to keep. I am the Lord your God. Do not steal anything or cheat anyone, and don't fail to pay your workers at the end of each day. I am the Lord your God, and I command you not to make fun of the deaf or to cause a blind person to stumble. Be fair, no matter who is on trial. Don't favor either the poor or the rich. Don't be a gossip, but never hesitate to speak up in court, especially if your testimony can save someone's life. Don't hold grudges. On the other hand, it's wrong not to correct someone who needs correcting. Stop being angry and don't try to take revenge. I am the Lord, and I command you, to love others as much as you love yourself. Don't mistreat any foreigners who live in your land. Instead, treat them as well as you treat citizens, and love them as much as you love yourself. Remember, you were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, today we are continuing our sermon series entitled Healing Our Broken Humanity. Our series is engaging Scripture and the insights of theologians Grace Ji-Soon Kim and Graham Hill to explore how we can discover 9 Christian practices that they believe will bring healing and hope to our broken world. Rather than obsessing over the latest headlines or the state of the nation, we can focus on how we can make our church an island of sanity, a place of peace and possibility, a sanctuary where the divisive and destructive forces of our world can be kept at bay. And by embodying these healing and hope-filled practices, we can make a difference locally, and we can help our community experience welcome, belonging, justice, and love. And so last week, we reflected on the practice of restoring justice to those who have been denied justice. We learned from the prophet Micah that God asks all of us to do our part to build a society of justice and fairness for all, to work with compassionate and faithful love, and to be intentional in our relationship with God that we might grow into deeper love and connection with others. And like all the prophets in the Bible, Micah's theological vision is deeply rooted in the book of Leviticus. It also shapes our exploration today of today's practice of reactivating hospitality by rejecting division and exclusion and welcoming all kinds of people into the household of God. Now, the book of Leviticus, it continues the Exodus story, right? So God acted in history. The Israelites are liberated by God from slavery in Egypt, and they are now on their way to a place of freedom and safety that they'll be able to call their own. And during this journey, the people are given instructions on how to be holy, on how to be acceptable to God, and in good relationship with one another. And holiness, it's not about following some detailed set of religious rules so that your halo sits on your head straight. Holiness is a characteristic of God. God is holy, and because God is holy, God's people are called to be that way, acting like God in the world. And think about that. Like, so far in this story about God acting in the world, God's activity is to intervene in human history, to rescue an oppressed people from injustice and violence. And this is why, in this book that is so concerned about holiness, you find a focus on social justice. And Susan read that passage. There's all those concrete stipulations there. Produce should be left in the fields for poor people to glean. Neighbors should be dealt with honestly. Wages should be paid promptly. Disputes should be settled with equity and fairness. It seems that holiness has a whole lot to do with rolling up our sleeves and getting involved in the world. If we are to be holy, as God is holy, then your attitude and your actions, they've got to demonstrate that you are a person of peace, of justice, of love. And nowhere is this better exemplified in the entire book of Leviticus than here in chapter 19 with these twin commandments to love your neighbor as much as you love yourself and to love the foreigner as much as you love yourself. Now, love in Leviticus, it's not simply feelings. Love is about attitudes and actions, right? It's not only like feel love, but you have to act in ways that tangibly and concretely demonstrate that love. Just in the same way that you show your love for God by actively following God's commandments, you show that you love other people by how you treat them with compassion and concern. The ancient rabbis, they taught that this clause here to love another as you love yourself, that wasn't that you could throttle your love for someone else based upon your self-esteem at the moment, right? Like, I'm not feeling great about myself, so I don't have to love you guys very well, right? Rabbis taught that this love here, it's about recognizing that every last one of us, like all of us, are created in the image of God, which is a way of saying that all of us have inherent worth and dignity. And when I love someone, I'm recognizing that they are a human being that is deeply loved by God. I'm acknowledging that, and I'm extending the appropriate level of compassion and concern. And in the ancient world, right, like to love someone else who's part of your own people group, who's part of your own like social class, it's not very revolutionary. Right? Most cultures and religions had that. Like the people who are like you. Now, to love people of all different social classes and abilities, now that's a very pious thing to say. Men and women, rich and poor, all right, we're approaching something fairly nice. But to love people who are not like you, not part of your tribe or your people group, to love the foreigner, whether that means immigrant or refugee or simply a temporary resident, to care for them as if they are a native-born citizen, this is a very radical teaching that is not shared by Israel's neighbors in the world at this time. Biblical scholar Jacob Milgram, he actually calls this the summit of biblical ethics. The summit of biblical ethics. That no matter someone's race or class or gender or physical ability or immigration status, that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect, that everyone should receive justice and fairness. And Leviticus insists, right, that the measure of our faith in God, the way in which we might measure our love for God, it is dependent upon how we treat others, particularly the vulnerable, or as Jesus would say, how you care for the least of these. And I was thinking this week about how much the commandment to love the foreigner who lives among you, to love them as you love yourself, is a really interesting and important commandment for us to reflect on as a community of faith. As more and more we see articles coming out, people looking at the new census data and reflecting on what that means for our nation, but also right here in Virginia. And there are some really exciting changes taking place. So over the last decade, Virginia has become a more racially and ethnically diverse state. For the first time in our history, since we've been collecting data here at the census, the majority of people under the age of 18 are people of color. 1 in 10 Virginians is now Hispanic or Latinx, and we have over 1 million immigrants in Virginia from a diverse set of countries, right? El Salvador, India, Korea, Mexico, the Philippines, China, just to name a few. Oh, and we actually see that right here in Fairfax County. So I was curious. I read this about Virginia. I was curious what it looks like in Fairfax County, right here where Vienna Baptist is located. Here's something that feels true when I heard it, but I never thought this was the case. Did you know that a third of the county's population is immigrants? A third of Fairfax County are immigrant neighbors. A majority come from Spanish-speaking countries in Central America, but there's also a lot of our neighbors from India and Korea, Vietnam. Most have lived in the United States for over 15 years. They're in the labor force, and they're bilingual. 80% speak English well or very well. Our immigrant neighbors also know about the high cost of living that puts a strain on every family, regardless of citizenship status. Right, so a recent study found that a family with one working parent and 2 children would need to earn at least $106,000 a year to have a modest yet adequate standard of living. $106,000 for modest yet adequate. You're not buying new cars, not upgrading the home with renovations. You're just doing all right. That same family, if they just wanted to make living wage, right? We're not even getting to modest. We just want adequate baseline here. Living wage here in Fairfax County is a job paying $37 an hour, or making $77,000 a year. Now, all families, you talk to any parents here, we all feel that. Even if you don't have kids, you could feel the pressure of what it means to try and live in Fairfax County, even just to rent an apartment. But our immigrant neighbors feel this even more acutely, right? So according to the Fairfax County, the median individual income of a non-citizen immigrant in Fairfax County is $35,000 a year. It's the average median income. It's less than half of what you need to earn to take care of your family. Right? It means that there are so many children in our community that are living below the poverty line. And one of the driving factors of this is just the lack of affordable housing. Right? So if a family just wants to try and live in their own apartment, once they've paid the month's rent, they have only a few $100s left over for groceries and health care and transportation and taxes and all the other necessary costs we have to have in our family budgets. These numbers were shocking to me. I don't know how they're sitting with you, but I was deeply shocked. And more so because they put numbers and really reveal that what we've heard so much from our neighbors here in Vienna that we've been in relationship with, that their stories, they're not anecdotal. They're not isolated. They're part of what we see across the county, tragically what we see across our region here, that hard-working immigrant families, they're pushing against these unjust policies and practices like incredibly low wages that remain stagnant, and rent that is far too high for anyone. That they're struggling every day, doing the best they can to invest in their kids, to give them a better future. We saw this firsthand a couple of years ago. So working with Cunningham Park Elementary School, we began to hear from our neighbors about how a bus line had been cut that ran through the center of Vienna, about how this left many families, the majority of whom were immigrant families, without access to grocery stores, community centers, to jobs. We talked to one mother who just kind of showed us what many were doing. They were having to walk 4 miles round trip just to get to the grocery store. And that meant that when they got to the grocery store, not only were they operating on a limited budget, but now they had to further whittle that grocery list down to what they could carry on their way back. So our church, we began to build an action team. We worked with parents like Dina and Juana. We worked with PTA leaders like Tracy and Angie. We had church members on this team. We worked together to get our bus line back here in the county. After a year-long process that involved meetings on playgrounds, many of you signing petitions here in the foyer, we got a $1.2 million reinvestment plan from the county that those mothers now have a bus that they can take to the grocery store. It's made a tremendous impact that I continue to hear about to this day from school administrators, from parents, about how impactful that has been for them. And our work with Marshall Road Elementary School. Over the past year and a half, we have seen how much the pandemic has disproportionately impacted those families, creating enormous needs that thankfully we and other mission partners were able to work together to provide basic necessities like groceries for families. They could keep food on the table. They could use their funds to help their kids, and we're continuing to do that, right? We're continuing to gather food. We're looking at collecting winter clothing to take care of our neighbors, their families. But we also know that there are issues that existed before the pandemic that are continuing to persist here. So for many of our immigrant neighbors, when we talk with parents and community leaders, many of them talk about the need for community-based after-school programs to help kids who are both trying to learn a new culture and learn a new language, all while they're trying to learn math and science. And I cannot imagine the creativity and resilience those students need. I had enough trouble learning math, and I understood the language of my teacher. I mean, I thought she was speaking a different language, but she was speaking English to me about what geometry was. These kids are having to operate on multiple levels, learning all kinds of things. It's not that they're not smart. They're highly intelligent. They need extra support so that they can reach their fullest potential. And oftentimes it's hard with after-school programs. It's not near where they live because they don't have transportation to get to the programs, even if there are some. We need support for parents who are needing to learn basic technology skills, particularly as we more and more live in a society where if you don't know how to access Zoom, how are you going to do a job interview? The email access, all these kind of critical ways that we can often take for granted are key for parents. Improving their conversational English skills, things that we hear a lot about, also opportunities that can fit with their work schedule, especially if they're working multiple jobs, and help navigating the incredibly complex and difficult process for work permits and citizenship. I've had a couple friends that I have worked with and just helped just connecting them with different legal services. I will tell you, it is shocking. Just try and go on any state website. Here's a really easy one. Try and figure out how you change your title from one state to another and do that in English, and you will find it is a mad labyrinth of web pages that you have to access, right? The DMV is where democracy and efficiency go to die, right? And that's if you understand the protocols in place. So all of these create barriers for folks to get the things they need in order to not just survive, but to thrive here. And Leviticus tells us that our true faith and devotion to God is revealed by how much we care for these neighbors. Not just in how we feel, but how much we act, how we build relationships, how we listen and learn. Everything that I've listed for you today comes from actual conversations our missions team has had with folks. Right? We didn't get it from reading a book. And that's so important because so many times ideas we come up with may make sense on paper, but they don't make sense for the communities that need them. Everybody's the expert of their own lives, to recognize the image of God speaking to us through them. And so as we reflect, how our county is changing, how our state is changing, how our world is changing? How do we think about how the work and mission of the church changes in response to that? What new ministries and outreach is God calling us to do? How is God calling us to respond if we're truly going to be a church for our community, a church for our neighbors? I think our schools have been a great source of relationship and guidance. So how do we deepen these partnerships that together we might expand our impact? How are we willing to change our own internal culture as a church? That our rhythms of worship, of welcome, of being a faith, they become more welcoming, more inviting. They can create spaces of true belonging. I think this is important beyond just immigration status. I mean, this summer we've been talking a lot about what it means to be an even more safe and welcoming space for LGBTQ Christians, both those who are members of our church and those who are not yet members of our church. People might know that this is a space of belonging. Because we realized very acutely that putting on your church website or in a bulletin that all are welcome doesn't actually tell you very much. There are many churches who don't accept women in leadership, don't accept people of diverse backgrounds into membership and other forms of leadership, who say all are welcome. It's kind of just like a vague phrase, right? And we truly are a caring church. We've been known for caring and welcoming for a long time. So what are the ways in which we communicate that in ways that are deeply meaningful and inviting for folks? Not just in what we say, but also the kind of church culture that we exist. You know, when you come into a church, how do you know that you belong or are welcomed without anyone ever having to tell you? Without having to read a mission statement or go digging through 5 web pages. That's what we seek to create. That's what hospitality is, right? You think about welcoming somebody into your home, you hope that the ways in which you greet them at the door, where you sit them at the table, it communicates a love and a care without you ever having to say, gee, Uncle Bob, we're really glad that you're here. You are welcome here. Not all your Facebook posts, but you are welcome here, right? Don't talk like that. At least I hope not. Not if you want the dinner to go well, right? But we hope that how we carry ourselves lets people feel good. That's the kind of church we want to be. A kind of church that our community knows we care, not just by what we say, but by how we exist in the community. How we're out there caring for folks and building relationships. May we be a church that everyone, regardless of their race or their class or their gender or their sexual identity or their physical ability or their immigration status or any other thing you can come up with, may everyone know that here at Vienna Baptist you belong. You're welcomed. You might discover the love of God who sees you and knows you. It says you are beautiful and beloved and worthy of all dignity and respect. Because this is what it means to love God. That we do this not just here, but in how we're helping shape a community and its laws and its public policies. Because as Dr. Cornell West would say, justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is what love looks like in public. May we join God in building a better world of more love today. Amen. Well, it's always a joy to worship with you. If you're a guest with us today, I'm so glad that you're here. I'll be out in the foyer in just a moment. I hope you'll come by and say hello. I'd love to greet you. And I hope all of you, before you leave here today, take a look around, say hello to someone who you don't know or someone you haven't seen in a while. Just let them know that you're glad that they're here. I hope that we'll see you this afternoon for Trunk or Treat. And if you're willing to help us set a couple things out, be on the lookout for Pastor Jenny out in the foyer. You can help us for about 5 minutes and set up there. As you go forth from here, I hope you'll invite someone new to join us next week at our worship service. May you share something that challenged you or inspired you today with someone else. As we conclude this time of worship, being sent by the Spirit out into the world to be disciples of Jesus who join God in changing the world, may you receive now this parting blessing. Go in peace. As you go, may you be filled with the knowledge that you are deeply loved by God. And may that love shape the way that you see yourself. May it change the way that you see others. May you see every person that you interact with in your life as someone deeply loved, worthy of all dignity and respect. May you give them the gift of love. And may we join with God in building a world where all are loved, all are cared for, all are welcomed. And may we start here at VBC. Amen.